Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Sir Hunt on X, live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful 8th of April 2025. And hopefully the weather here in Cincinnati starts to settle down because we have some sunshine. Again, for those who are living in the treacherous conditions in Cincinnati or wherever where there's floods, I hope everybody out there is nice and safe, and everyone is just having a wonderful day today. Lots of things to touch on. Got some new followers here. A couple people asking me about this. Just give you a brief intro before I get started. Of course, live streaming and podcasting has been a way, and it's something I've been wanting to do for quite some time. Just never learned how to go about it, simply because it is not my nature in the longest time. But as I started to see people do some of this, I started to generate some ideas for myself, and I tried it slowly, and I started to increase the platform. People know me on excellent Facebook platforms, and that's why I start over there. Especially the connections I have locally here in the Claremont County area, the ones I'm employed with, and the ones I know for the longest time. I started there, and I've built bigger platforms such as Apple, iHeart, and Spotify. And if you guys missed any part of this show, whether be here or wherever, I will upload the replays on those three platforms: Apple, iHeart, and Spotify, because that's the three main platforms for the podcast and live streaming. And the video version will be live on the Spotify platform after the show is done. It should be the replay version. So just want to address that. I always like to introduce myself to new people, because as I expand, more people and more functions, or the people in a particular field, have seen this. And I just want to say thank you. I don't do things for monetization. I don't do things for dollars. On the bigger platforms, everything is free, because I've been asked a couple questions about it. Everything is free. As long as you have the Apple Podcast, the Spotify app, and the iHeart apps, you're more than welcome to download it for free and listen to it all the time you want. Nothing is done for monetization. I don't believe in that sort of thing. I do this because I love it. I do it because I think it's a fun thing, and it's more of a new trend as opposed to what it was back in the day when there were 7,000 word newspaper articles and 15,000 words on the social media posts, as well as old school radio broadcasts from back in the day, which sort of died down a little bit with the evolution of apps. So that's why I choose to do this. And I think that you guys were watching that, and I've always said, I'm not going to need anything. If you feel like I can improve myself, I am more than welcome to listen to your requests, and I will take them in and listen to your recommendations. To get started here real quick, actually go a little outside the box. Actually, we'll start with the wild news in Denver today. The firing of Mike Malone and their GM, Calvin Booth. I think maybe 4 or 5 games left in the NBA season. And you're firing the guy who's basically probably winningest coach in the franchise's history, who's had, I think, 2 conference finals appearances, one in the title 2 years ago. It was basically a collapse away from going back to the Western Finals last season. And this guy is just getting canned. Now, there's all kinds of rumors floating around. Everybody knows what it is. I've always asked this question: what do you get out of firing somebody this late in the season, unless it's something ridiculously off the chain, unless it's something like someone caught a DUI or some kind of hype up, or something took place deep behind the scenes. That's the only thing I can think of with this. You have your 2 standouts in Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, and you're a 4 seed. And as long as you have Jokic and Murray, you're always going to have an opportunity to do something. But the timing of this is something that's a real eyebrow raiser. Turns out it's the second time in the last month we've had this. Of course, last month we know Taylor Jenkins was fired from Memphis. But I've always said, what do you gain out of firing a coach this late into the season, regardless of what's going to happen? I guess maybe Denver had higher expectations. Understandably so. We have a 3-time MVP and a Finals MVP and an NBA champion in Nikola Jokic. The expectations will be high. But to do it with a few games left in the season is just something that's a bit of an eyebrow raiser, especially when you consider the Western Conference. Outside of Oklahoma City, there's no real slam dunk out there. I mean, you have Houston, of course, you have the Lakers with LeBron and Luka, and Denver with Jokic and Murray. But it raises a question as to why you would do this with 4 games left. I mean, you're trying to spark a fire in this team. I don't know what you can do at this point because they're going to be glued into the 4 seed. So we'll see where this one goes. But it's strange that once again, we're talking about firing a couple games left into the season. Unless something off the chains happened that we don't know about, this doesn't make any sense to happen at this point. Especially when we talk about what Mike Malone has done for the Denver Nuggets over the past 5 years to get them to among the powers of the Western Conference, which it can get very top heavy and very strong, and that's what Denver was. Weird situation, but I'm sure Mike Malone will find work real quick. And with Malone gone, Kevin Booth is probably going to be gone, which he probably is, as I understood it, which makes sense because now whoever is going to be their new GM is going to want their own head coach, and they're going to have to start this team from scratch. But they do have the 2 centerpieces, Jokic and Murray, and they can just build off of that. The makeup of the roster, the bench wasn't all that great anyways, but I'm not sure that constitutes to why what took place today. Weird. Second time in about a month we're having this conversation. But I want to touch on some college hoops a little bit. Of course, it was championship week. Huge shout out to the big trio of Azzy Fudd, Sarah Strong, and of course, Paige Buchers of the UConn Lady Huskies, just rolling through the women's championship to win the national title. Gino Auriemma does the job again. But something rose my eyebrows today as I was reading this. There was a respected columnist named Bob Ryan, long time who was at TV for ESPN, and of course, Possible, accused the UConn Huskies of running the score on Dawn Strong's South Carolina Gamecocks. You know, you've finally said about blowouts. If you don't want that stuff to happen, do something about it at the tip. I crack up when everyone was fixated on a game with 2 minutes left. And you're down 25, and the score's going from 25 to 30, and you complain more about that than you are the previous 30 minutes of a ball game. I mean, if you're going to hit something like this, why don't you just start from the tip off and do something about it? I mean, you had the whole game to do something about it. And nothing against South Carolina, who I thought played decently. UConn was just so far over the competition in this women's tournament that it doesn't matter what anybody did, their result was going to be epidemic. I mean, it was pretty self-explanatory. And Gino Auriemma ascending to the next level. Of course, people like Bob Ryan making these accusations. If you're going to complain about a game that's basically going from 25 to 27 with like 30 seconds left, why don't you complain about why the team didn't show up for the previous 30 minutes? Because you had the whole game to do something about it. But you're going to complain about running the score up. It is the unwritten rule, but you have the whole game from the tip-off to the end to do something about it, to not allow that to happen. I'm appalled how many people don't take a proactive approach to this, and that's why we have people yapping about stuff like this year in and year out. But you can't deny the excellence of Gino Auriemma and what he's done over there at the University of Connecticut for the women's team. Paige Buchers ends her collegiate career with a national title, and that team was just talk about next level efficiency. All the advanced metrics, their efficiency level was something off the charts. And one thing I will say about this women's basketball team, I can't say much about men's, especially with this UConn team. They played as a team. I mean, there was no one. There was no going for stats. They were making pure basketball plays, playing the game as a team, and that's why they won the national title. And it was just a beauty to watch. The Buchers was one of the premier two-way players in the women's bracket, and to see her end her career with a national title is just a wonderful thing. So I just want to give a shout out to the UConn Lady Huskies, and a job well done. Congratulations on winning the national title. You are the best team in the women's nation from start to finish, and you completed it the right way, winning the national title, regardless of people's accusations of running the score. I cracked up at this because not just in that game in all team sports. Why are people complaining about running the score up when the team is falling behind like 20 to 30 points with like 2 minutes left of the ball game, and then you're scoring in a row of a touchdown to boost the lead? How about just be prepared to play from the beginning of the game to the end of the game, regardless of what sport it is? Basketball, football, soccer, baseball, hockey, you name it. Running the scores is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever encountered, I've ever seen when I watch these particular games and hear about it from all of the so-called pundits who think they know it all when they really don't. Play the whole game from start to finish, and at least make the effort seem like you're trying out there, because the score won't be that lopsided if you do. Crazy. And of course, last night, maybe one of the better college basketball finales I've seen in quite some time. It was, of course, Florida over Houston. A lot of people complaining about the officiating for Houston. And of course, the last play of the game where it was, if I can correctly, Emmanuel Sharp, of course, trying to go for the shot, drops the ball. You can't pick it up because it would be a travel. The problem was Houston had this game under control, but couldn't finish the job. Kudos to Florida for stepping up, making the plays necessary, and getting the job done to win the national title. It was Will Richard with a solid game. The standout Walter Clayton Jr., who's been the best player for Florida throughout the entire tournament, and basically had a solid all-around game last night. But it was Florida who made the adjustments to come back after being down as many as 12 to win the game. And the thing about this game was how Houston was bragging about how the referees always favored Duke in the game before. We know the story there with the Cooper flag lane violation. And of course, now Houston, that's their little karma out of that. But I said with this, if you have a you can't put a team away. You can deserve in the end. And certainly Houston did. And it's a shout out to the team over there, Florida, who made the adjustments necessary to get the job done and finish with a national title. And of course, the defense that closed out on Emmanuel Sharp, to not allow him to get the shot off, was a big deal. Of course, the play that was ran by Houston for supposed to be the game winner wasn't necessarily a well run either, because the Florida defense was ready for it, and that was just the end of the ballgame. Kudos to Florida, job well done. Walter Clayton Jr., the outstanding player in the tournament, has a solid all-around game, well deserved. I mean, the college basketball tournament, I'll put it on honest, this season, until the Final Four, was a bit of a dud, because they usually have one or two Cinderella stories that come out of nowhere and it captures the imagination. Nobody did this season. It was more of what was expected. Of course, Florida had an excellent win over Auburn, where Walter Clayton Jr. just went wild on him. But other than that, nothing really stood out. And we go into the world of baseball. Shout out to Wladimir Guerrero Jr. getting a new contract with the Blue Jays. It's funny because in the offseason, they didn't come to an agreement. People questioned what was going to happen. Now they come to an agreement. And basically what happened as a result, he's there for quite some time. I believe like 14 years in the $500 million range. His dad, the stand-up Wladimir Guerrero Sr., one-time player for the Montreal Expos. I remember him. He was a stand-up player himself. Guerrero Jr. could be pretty good himself. I've run over the years with athletes. The son of a great athlete doesn't turn out to be as great as the father, but they can have their own legacies and their careers the way they want. But kudos to the Toronto Blue Jays, who didn't get the deal done in the offseason to get the job done, get the deal done, and we're on to the rest of the baseball season. A little bit of a weird start to the beginning outside of the Dodgers, who have the most stacked roster in baseball history. We know the story with that. And so, we talk in the NFL. Once again, here in Cincinnati, the standoff between Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals. This thing has gone all over the place. I'm still holding out hope something gets done. But my stance has always been, as offseason has gone, was this. You should have had him taken care of first. Because if you didn't take care of him first, this is going to limbo. We talked about what happened with the contracts, Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, and of course, recently, Danielle Hunter of the Houston Texans getting larger contracts. Now the Bengals painted themselves in a corner and a complex issue, which I thought they should have had this issue with Hendrickson done before the start of last season, when the opportunity was there. And per usual, the Bengals front office tucked their tail between their legs and didn't get the job done. Of course, they got the contract extensions with Chase and Higgins, which I have a problem with. But I said all along, I wouldn't mind the contracts of Chase and Higgins if they taken care of their needs first. Problem is, they didn't. I mean, the thing you got out of it was a guy named Terrell Slayton to fill the defensive tackle roster. I'm sure they're going to have to go through the draft and craft almost perfectly now as a result. But everyone's up in arms about the situation with Trey Hendrickson here in Cincinnati. I thought it should have been done before it got to this point. That's where the Bengals front was flopped. That's where all the Bengals media and everyone affiliated with the Bengals flopped because they were so crazed up over the running Jamar Chase and T. Higgins sign. You could have had him sign anytime during the offseason. That was fine. But you should have had Trey Hendrickson taken care of first. And should have had that deal done before you took care of anything else. And now here we are stuck in this because apparently the talks are stalled once again. They've been asking for a first-round pick, which is not going to happen because a team who gets Trey Hendrickson is going to have to sign him to an extension north of something like what Danielle Hunter got in Houston or even what Max Crosby got in Las Vegas. Complex situation. I think Hendrickson will play this year out, and we'll see where it goes from there. Hopefully, he stays here in Cincinnati for at least another year or two, but I don't know if that's how it's going to happen. We'll see. Now to some fight conversations. And of course, the big news today was, of course, the vacating of the belt by Dmitri Bivol to we want to have for a start fight with Artur Beterbiev or Beterbiev, or however you want to pronounce it, as opposed to fighting the undeserved mandatory David Benavidez. Let me remind you idiots in the boxing community of this. There's no ducking going on. If anybody thinks there's ducking going on, don't follow the sport because there is no ducking going on with this. Dmitri Bivol is the king of the light heavyweight division. He can do whatever it is he wants. He already said he was going to give Beterbiev a third fight, and he was going to commit to it. He's honoring it. He deserves nothing but kudos. No way he's ducking David Benavidez because he's basically a low-risk, low-reward fight for Dmitri Bivol at this point. Because Bivol is probably just box circles around him to where David Benavidez is blind. But he won't get any cash reward out of it simply because Benavidez doesn't know how to establish himself as a bona fide top fighter. Everybody's accusing Canelo Alvarez of ducking him, which is also false. Low-risk, low-reward fighter for any of the top guys. Dmitri Bivol did the one thing that he should have done for the longest time. If you guys remember, the belt he dropped, this same governing body did not want to approve a Beterbiev Bivol undisputed championship fight when it was talked about years back because the President Mauricio Suleiman came out and admitted it was because of the background of Dmitri Bivol, which is Russian, and the political field, which I don't use the platform for. You know what that's all about. And one of the most absurd things I've ever seen or encountered in the world of boxing and denying a fighter a title shot because of his national background. But good for Dmitri Bivol because I'm sure that took part in the consideration. Of course, there was a nasty letter sent by his team to the governing body involved with Mauricio Suleiman, where they just got taken to the cleaners. Nobody here wants to talk about the fact that they tried to deny Dmitri Bivol a shot at this title because he was Russian. Why? Doesn't fit in there. It speaks to the cowardice that is David Benavidez, the cowardice that is Mauricio Suleiman, the cowardice that is Samson Likowicz, whoever pronounces his name, the manager of David Benavidez. Speaks to the cowardice of Premier Boxing Champions, and it speaks to the cowardice of the David Benavidez fans who wrongfully accused Dmitri Bivol of ducking because they have no clue how the business side of boxing works. I mean, basically, he pulled a Riddick bow, threw the book in the garbage can. Of course, there was a whole different scenario with Riddick Bowe versus Dmitri Bivol. But the best thing that came out of this was the governing body, again, got exposed as nothing but a bunch of crooked garbage and bias. And it was time to get taken to the cleaners. Kudos to Dmitri Bivol for taking this particular belt and saying adios to it and telling the governing body to just shove it when it comes to fighting a contender who has no business fighting for any championship whatsoever, especially being considered this governing body didn't want Dmitri Bivol as a champ because he was Russian. Dmitri Bivol won the world of boxing today and won it big. Whether the Benavidez cowards want to accept it, it's up to them because they're filled with racist cowards all over the place in the boxing community. We all know this. Especially the false accusations of accusing Canelo Alvarez of ducking him, which is false. And now they want to give Benavidez the belt, which is what David Benavidez wanted all along. He didn't want to go out there and fight Canelo Alvarez for a belt. He didn't want to go fight Dmitri Bivol for a belt. And so what happens? This narrative is for they reject the purse bid, and Dmitri Bivol says, you can have the belt. I have no desire to fight for it. And I'm sure a lot of it has to do with the pathetic accusation that Mauricio Suleiman had on Dmitri Bivol years back because of his Russian background, not wanting to have him hold their championship belt. It's a sad story when it comes down to that. I mean, I don't know why people dislike Dmitri Bivol that much. I mean, he's a good fighter. Good fighter, undisputed champ. Now he's undisputed champ. He can do whatever the frick it is he wants in that division. That's one thing David Benavidez fans are too ignorant and stupid to think about because of their blatant cowardice and knowing that Dmitri Bivol holds all the cards in the division, and he's a man of his word, saying he would honor a third fight with Artur Beterbiev, which is set for October, and he's going to be a man of his word and honor it. David Benavidez fans need to learn how to stop being cowards and grow the hell up. Period. And another negotiation fight, which everybody wants to talk about, is of course Shakur Stevenson and William Zepeda. They're going to a purse bid. We'll see where this one goes because we know how crooked Oscar De La Hoya is. I'm still not expecting this fight to take place because now they want a 50-50 split being the De La Hoya camp, which William Zepeda isn't worth that much. Not even for Shakur Stevenson for that matter. So I'd be surprised if that one takes place because everybody knows, especially in the Oscar De La Hoya camp, the reason why they ask for so much money is because they know that Shakur Stevenson will just dust off Zepeda like it's nothing. Because Zepeda looked like worse than mediocre. There's 2 wins over Tevin Farmer. Basically, Tevin Farmer, who I didn't know was still fighting until these 2 fights happened. But kudos to Farmer for giving a hell of an effort. I'm not expecting this fight to come through at some sorts. The things at a poor spin. Who knows where this is going to go? But dealing with Oscar De La Hoya, we know, is just absolute a trip to the drug lord because that's what Oscar De La Hoya and Bernard Hopkins are these days, a pair of used up drug lords hooked on cocaine in the boxing promotion business. But I'm not expecting that fight to come through anytime soon. I'm expecting maybe they'll try to stall Shakur Stevenson out the way when they had Canelo Alvarez. They stalled out Kinetic Golovkin. We know the story about that one. That's what's going to be coming out of all of this, and get ready for the extra fiasco on this. Now to a historical night in light heavyweight boxing history. Actually, this is for the David Benavidez morons out there because we had some who think David Benavidez would beat the guy I'm talking about. That's the standout Bob the Sheriff Foster, and it was this day over 53 years ago when he unified the 175-pound title to become undisputed in the 2-belt era, blasting out Vicente Rondon in 2 rounds at the Civic Center in Miami, Florida. Bob Foster, for a light heavyweight, was a very imposing figure. You're talking about a 6'4", 6'5" light heavyweight with an 80-inch reach. Use that reach to near perfection, and he was known for that left hook. If you put it on your chin, you were out. But how he was able to set up the left hook, he had that long reach. You're talking about basically a Tommy Hearns type built fighter who basically almost fought like Hearns because of his lengthy build. But that left hook was basically perfect for his time. This fight came about because at one time Foster held the 2 belts, but because of how the governing bodies worked, he was stripped of one of them. Vicente Rondon got one of the belts by being the standout Jimmy Dupree. We had a couple successful title defenses before this fight came about. And you had a ticked off Bob Foster who admitted that I can't stand the governing bodies. Actually, he's not the only one that has a sentiment. Not 90 to 95% of the boxing community does. But in this particular fight, Vicente Rondon was basically the victim. Early in the second round, it said Bob Foster utilizes jab, gets his side, sneak left hook, down goes Rondon for the first time. He gets up and basically is trying to move away and survive. Foster tracks him down about a minute later. A double left hook to the head. Down goes Rondon for the second time. And he's out for the count. And Bob Foster is the undisputed light heavyweight champion of the world. We bring this up because everyone's so fixated with governing bodies. Governing bodies had never had any credibility in boxing. But when you went undisputed back then in the two-belt era, where there was only two belts, and it was all, he was the king of the crop. There's a reason why they called Bob Foster the sheriff, and he showed it on this night when he placed that left hook perfectly square on the chin of Rondon, and that was all she wrote. And now we have idiots, especially David Benavidez fans, who are ignorant enough to think David Benavidez can beat Bob Foster. I'm going to be the kind guy and give good advice to David Benavidez fans today. If you're stupid enough to think David Benavidez belongs in the same category as Bob Foster, shut your mouths, get off the apps, go to a local hospital, get checked for CTE, get the results, and come back to me so I can help you. Because Bob Foster is a top 5 all-time great light heavyweight, and nobody's still even heard of David Benavidez. You talk about the all-time great light heavyweights with Bob Foster, of course, the Cincinnati kid over here, Ezra Charles, Billy Conn, Archie Moore, Tommy Lock, Bob Foster. They passed him. Talk about guys like Michael Spinks, Harry Greb, Gene Tunney. You can even throw in a guy like Tiger Flowers in the conversation, Harold Johnson. The list goes on and on and on. But Bob Foster certainly a top 5 light heavyweight. 14 successful title defenses of his championships against 13 different fighters. Basically, done with the left jab and the left hook. He knew how to hit you with it. He knew where to hit you with it. And when he hit you with it, it was all she wrote. That's what happened to Venezuela's Vicente Rondon, 53 years ago in Miami, Florida. Bob Foster was just an opposing figure. Of course, Foster had a couple chances to fight for the heavyweight championship against Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali, but because he couldn't fit a heavyweight frame, he was in over his head. Both guys just wiped him out. But his greatness was always at light heavyweight. Rondon himself, after this fight, tried a couple times at light heavyweight and went up to heavyweight, It was obliterated in 2 rounds by Ron Lyle, and somehow managed to survive a 10-round beating against Ernie Shavers in a fight where Shavers was beaten from pillar to post. But after that, it was the end of Rondon, the standout fighter from Caracas, Venezuela. You don't associate Venezuelan fighters with boxing much, but that's what Vicente Rondon was. Solid heavyweight, won a title, had a couple successful title defenses, but that was pretty much it when he got obliterated by Bob Foster in Miami. And to conclude on a special birthday, shout out to the guy who's pulled off the most shocking moment, maybe in sports history. Happy 65th birthday, James Buster Douglas. You know the story? It was 35 years and 2 months ago in Tokyo, Japan. As a 42-1 underdog, he did the world a favor by giving Mike Tyson the beating of his life, turning his face inside out, putting him on all fours, crawling for his mouthpiece. One thing that still irks me to this day, like every time I bring up this fight, is still the excuses I hear from Mike Tyson fans, Mike Tyson supporters, Mike Tyson media people as to why this happened. This happened because James Buster Douglas was driven to be the heavyweight champion of the world that night. He was fighting a fight for his mom, who succumbed to a stroke 23 days before the fight. And he was training for the fight of his life, fought the fight of his life, and gave Mike Tyson the beating of his life, and basically ended the invincibility of Mike Tyson, or the perceived invincibility. Because Mike Tyson didn't fight cocaine use. Mike Tyson didn't fight Robin Gibbons. Mike Tyson didn't fight Don King. Mike Tyson didn't fight Octavio Mayron, the referee. Mike Tyson fought James Buster Douglas, and Douglas gave him the beating of his life. Because it's plain and simple. I mean, I don't want to hear about Mike Tyson didn't train for the fight, because if he did, the way Douglas was, it would have been a 3-round fight. Buster Douglas was going to Japan for one mission, and he was going to leave Japan with a heavyweight championship. He did just that when he basically nearly decapitated Tyson with the uppercut, put him on all fours, looking for his mouth piece, and that was all she wrote. And still, you could probably argue the greatest upset in sports history. I could probably throw in The 1980 Miracle on Ice. You know the story about that one. The USA shocking Soviet Union at Lake Placid, New York. That's probably in that conversation. But nothing tops 42-1 odds what Buster Douglas did on that night in Tokyo, Japan, February 11th, 1990. Nothing is going to top that. Because no one thought Mike Tyson was going to ever be beat, at least perception-wise. I mean, he was a steamroller through everybody. And he had a guaranteed $30.5 million payday to fight Evander Holyfield. That went down the tubes with the Holyfield watch at ringside. Even Evander Holyfield said Tyson beating Douglas was not a foregone conclusion because he's seen Buster Douglas fight. But it was 35 years ago the other day that happened. Happy 65th birthday to James Buster Douglas. You're the greatest one-hit wonder, maybe walking gods from the earth. And what you did on that day in Tokyo, Japan, was the greatest thing the world ever saw. I mean, to see that fan base of his, that fan base of Mike Tyson's, broken in tears, making excuses 35 years later, that's my point about them all along. Buster Douglas being fair and square. It's time everybody accepts it, because you can't turn back the hands of time and fix it. The result's not going to change. There was no long count. Buster Douglas being fair and square. I mean, accept it. It's over with. Move on. I mean, I watched that thing as a teenager. I thought Mike Tyson would have been sort of cool that he won because we'd had a Holyfield fight. Buster Douglas being fair and square. Happy birthday, James Buster Douglas. Hope you're doing well there in Columbus, Ohio. I could go on and on about that particular fight. I wanted to. Actually, a couple months back, I had the 35-year anniversary of that fight, which I wrote an article about, and I had my live stream about, because every February 11, 1990 will forever be James Buster Douglas Day. Actually, it'll be February 11 in Tokyo, February 10 in the States, due to the 12-hour time difference, so it could be televised live on HBO's World Championship Boxing. Again, you have to pay a dime for that fight, but that was the best part, because that's what Douglas and Tyson was on that day. I know a lot of my Tyson fans would be upset about it, but it's 2025, not 1990. Simply put, get over it and move on. I get you guys are still heartbroken that it happened. You guys still take over the image of Mike Tyson being on all fours looking for his mouthpiece. And you guys still make excuses for a long count that he didn't train. He was hooked on whatever, Robin Givens and Don King. He wasn't fighting any of that. He was fighting James Buster Douglas. Happy birthday, James Douglas. And that'll wrap up this edition of Sir on X. I hope everyone has themselves a wonderful rest of the 8th of April, 2025. Always like to conclude, I tell everyone this equally. Make self-care your number one priority in life. You take care of yourself first, good things will follow. If you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else matters. Always take care of yourself personally, your health, your physical health, and your mental health. Because you take care of those first, then everything else will follow you good, all the good things in life. Have a good rest of the night. I will be back tomorrow night. Take care, God bless, and enjoy the evening.